Peep peep! What's up, guys? It's Mr. Artist here, and this is a slideshow of my Season 5 Thomas & Friends Promo Image Editorials. As you watch the slideshow, pay attention to the various details in color, texture, shape, etc. To me, it's the colors that stand out most, as when I edit them, they're more vibrant. Both Thomas and Percy look very splendid in this image. Notice how the sunlight is shining on their paintworks, and notice how that makes their paintworks look very splendid indeed. Both tank engines also look splendid in this image, as the sunlight is reflecting on their paintworks again, and notice how that makes the two tank engines look splendid. But I think Cranky the Crane is the main focus of this image. And as you know, this image depicts Thomas and the other engines teasing Percy about his dirty appearance. And Percy, I'm sorry, but you don't look splendid in this image. But Thomas, you look very splendid in this image. Thomas looks very splendid in this image. His shade of blue paint is absolutely splendid, and his smile is adorable. And his face is the only one showing. Sadly, I can't see Percy's. As you can see, this image of Thomas puffing through Tidmouth Halt is much more shaded and darker in tone compared to the others, but that doesn't make this image bad. Thomas still looks splendid in this image. That's the same case for this image of Thomas puffing by the windmill. It's shaded and darker in tone compared to most of the images that I display here. If you take this image of Thomas, Percy, and James out of context, you can recreate it as an episode where Thomas and Percy are teasing James about the time he became a runaway and that Edward saved him. Here's another darker toned image which features both Thomas and Percy. Thomas's shade of blue paint looks very dark and rich in this image, and Percy's shade of green paint looks very bright. Thomas also looks splendid in this image, as I love his smile and his shade of blue paint. And if you look closely at Sir Topham Hatt, you can see that his hat is torn and the back of his suit is ripped. Personally speaking, James looks more orange in this image. Although he's red, he looks orange in this image, but Thomas's shade of blue looks absolutely dark and rich. Now we're back to my favorite image. As I said, Thomas's shade of blue paint looks very dark and rich in the shaded areas and very reflective in the bright areas. Percy's shade of green paint also looks very bright. Here's another splendid image of Thomas from the episode James and the Trouble with Trees, and Thomas looks very splendid in this image. I love his shade of blue paint, it looks very blue, and I love his adorable smile. Thomas has really matured this season. He's not the same careless tank engine he once was in seasons 1 and 2. This is one of the few seasons where Thomas feels the most grown up. This image of Thomas at Kirk Ronan Station gives off a very classic vintage vibe because of its dark shades and bright colors. This image of Thomas puffing through Tidmouth Halt also presents a classic vibe because of its dark shades and bright colors. I'm telling you, these promo images are absolutely peak. This image of Thomas puffing by the windmill looks like a painting or a book illustration. It definitely looks like a mix of both, to be honest with you. This season is the only season in the entire show where Thomas feels like the most grown up and most mature, as the Unlucky Tug puts it, and I gotta say, I agree with him. For example, Thomas helps Henry after the Big Green Engine's accident in the sea. Instead of Thomas teasing Henry about his accident, the blue tank engine is actually sympathetic and compassionate for the big green engine. In earlier episodes, it's Thomas who is being a jerk to Henry for being late, but in this episode, it's Henry being a jerk to Thomas. But Henry apologized, and Thomas forgave him. This is a deleted scene from the episode Sir Topham Hatt's Holiday. Even though it's a deleted scene, I still like this image. I love Thomas's smile, and I love his shade of blue paint in this image. Absolutely splendid. I also love this image of Thomas puffing out of Tidmouth Halt with Annie and Clarabelle. Speaking of Annie and Clarabelle, it's also noteworthy that they're very polished at the end of this episode. I also like how Thomas's relationship with Annie and Clarabelle is established in this episode. When Lady Hatt says something about them, Thomas gets offended on their behalf, and I like that. Now here is Percy, our little green track star. Percy had the biggest of adventures this year, and he had the most spotlight episodes this season, even more so than Thomas, and a lot of fans wonder why Percy isn't the main character as of this point. Percy's already been a main character since season 2, so he doesn't need to be the main character of the entire show. That's what we have Thomas for. As evidenced by the episode put upon Percy, Percy is the embodiment of the smallest of engines having the biggest of adventures. I love Percy's smile and his shade of green paint in these images. Percy's shade of green paint is splendid, and his smile is absolutely adorable in these images. As you take a close look at these editorials, Percy's shade of green paint gives off a very Christmassy vibe. Just something about Percy's paint. It reminds me of Christmas. It reminds me of Christmas time. If or when I am to get married and have children, if I have a son, I'm gonna name him Percy. Yes, I'm going to name him after Percy, the famous green tank engine, Thomas's best friend. I love this image of Percy at Edward Station. His smile is adorable, and his shade of green paint is splendid. This image of Percy gives off a very classic vintage vibe, as it's shaded, but it's also rich in color. This image of Percy and Old Slow Coach is like an image of a grandma and her grandson, and Thomas would be Coach's other grandson. I love this image of Thomas and Percy. Thomas looks splendid with a shade of blue, and Percy looks splendid with his shade of green. There's nothing else to say about it. Oh, and I love this image of Percy blushing after the bride kissed him on his face. That is just so adorable. And the little green engine himself is also adorable. Now here is Henry the big green engine. Of the three big engines, Henry is usually the sympathetic one, but not this year. Henry is a full-on jerk in most of Season 5, and boy do I love Jerk Henry. This image of Henry at Howland Lake Station gives off a very vintage vibe because of the shaded spots, and this whole image is very shaded. This image of Henry also gives off a vintage vibe because of the shaded spots, and I gotta say, it makes the image look very splendid indeed, just like it did with Thomas and Percy's images. As I said previously, Thomas doesn't tease Henry after hearing about the big green engine's accident. Instead, the blue tank engine feels sorry for Henry, and that right there is Thomas maturing throughout the classic season. I also love how Henry apologized to Thomas for being rude earlier. I might as well add that Henry, along with Gordon, had the short end of the stick multiple times this season, as both big engines had multiple accidents throughout the season. This image of Henry is similar to the previous one, except it's more shaded in the dark spots, and it's brighter in the bright spot, and the bright spot is Henry's face. Henry has had 4 accidents this season, but 2 of his 4 accidents were more epic than the other 2. For example, the episode Haunted Henry. Henry crashes his freight cars into a ravine due to hitting some rubble, and that, I must say, was an epic crash. But nothing happened to Henry in that one. However, in the episode Something in the Air, Henry crashes head-on into the sea. Him and his freight cars, all into the sea. And in this image right here, you can see Henry spitting out water, and I don't know what that is on his boiler, but I think it's seaweed. Yeah, it's probably seaweed. Season 5 also brought out the worst in Gordon. I mean, to be fair, Gordon and James were always jerks, even bigger jerks than Henry, but now all 3 of them are equals. Frankly, I can't stand Gordon this season. Almost every appearance of his this season, he's always being a jerk to somebody. He's been a jerk to Thomas, Percy, and Toad. Honestly, his episode this year, A Better View for Gordon, is his best episode of the entire show because it shows that he's pompous and the accident brings him down to earth. In every appearance of his, Gordon is an outright jerk this season. No, I'm serious. Gordon is a big blue jerk in every appearance of his this season. I'm serious. You know what, Gordon? You are not the finest engine on Sodor, and you are definitely not the finest engine in the world, okay? Okay. I have no sympathy for the big blue engine when he crashes into the station wall. I think Gordon deserved that crash because he was a jerk to James and Percy. So yeah, Gordon deserved it. It served him right. So now we're on to the spookiest episode of the season, Duncan Gets Spooked. And I must say, this is a very interesting one. I like this episode for its ambiguity. It's so ambiguous as the episode doesn't explicitly say whether the ghost story is true or not. It's left ambiguous for the viewers to decide. That shows that the show doesn't talk down to its audience. All in all, I love how Rusty tried to knock Duncan down a peg or two because Duncan was teasing Peter Sam about his dilemma with the troublesome truck. So yeah, Rusty did a good job, I must admit. I like this silhouette of the mysterious engine traveling across the old iron bridge at night with the fog lifting from below and the full moon in the sky. It is a piece of art, or should I say it is a work of art. I inserted the Duncan Gets Spooked theme to match the vibe of this image, which is a work of art. Here's another image that fits the spooky vibe, and this one is of a silhouette of Duncan crossing the old iron bridge, pulling cars of slate. There are 3 details that I think breathe life into the image. That's the swirling mist from the ravine below, the full moon above, and Duncan's silhouette. All 3 together breathe life into the image. Duncan's crew did a splendid job at spooking him. They did a splendid job of spooking the crap out of the little golden yellow engine, and that is just very splendid indeed. Well done, guys. Now we're on to the most cinematic episode of the season, Toby and the Flood. And I gotta say, this episode is a cinematic masterpiece. The reason this episode was a cinematic masterpiece was because of the high-tensed action. Toby's own life was on the line in this episode. He almost went past the waterfall, and if he did that, he would have died. No more Toby, but luckily, God sent Harold his way. This image of Toby halfway across the bridge amplifies how nervous he truly is. And I gotta say, if I were in Toby's place, I would feel just as nervous, not gonna lie. I love the soundtrack used for this sequence. It is very fitting and it is very upbeat. and it's very tense. Just how I like it for this episode. Percy also plays a crucial role in this episode, as he plays a part in saving Toby from going past the waterfall. And I gotta say, Percy's a very brave little engine, just as brave as Toby. Harold also played a crucial role in saving Toby's life, as without Percy and Harold, Toby would have just fallen off of the waterfall and into the waters below to never be seen again. So this image of Toby's driver looking at the danger sign that says, "Beware the waterfall," it amplifies how nervous the driver is as well as Toby. It makes sense too, given how drivers also have emotions as well as the engines do. And honestly, I like Toby's driver. He's a really nice guy. Most of the engine's drivers, if not all, are really, really nice guys. And now here's the image of Percy pitching in to rescue Toby from going over the waterfall. And I must say, Percy is a very brave engine. Even though Percy's a small engine, he's a very brave engine at that. And like I said, he's the embodiment of the smallest of engines having the biggest of adventures. So now here is Oliver, the Great Western Engine. The Great Western Engine who loves to go on adventure as of this season. At this point in the show, Oliver grows so much as a character. He started from being a lost cause as an engine who was facing scrap to an engine who was full of himself, and now he's an engine who wants to see the world, much like Thomas back in season 1. Oliver and Toad have quite a good relationship this year. In one episode, it's Oliver venting to Toad about his problems, and in the other, it's Toad venting to Oliver about his problems. I can understand where Oliver is coming from in terms of being tired of the same routine every day, as like shunting freight cars onto a turntable. I mean, since he says that's all he ever does, I imagine that can be very frustrating for him. I mean, Thomas was once in that place as well, so Oliver can talk to Thomas about it. That's it for this video, folks, and I will see you all in the next video. And hey, as a way of closing this video, what better way than to showcase my favorite promo image editorial of Thomas and Percy working at the docks again.